Good morning, gorgeous humans. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the morning show. I'm your host, Marli Ansel at Marli Ansel on the Instagrams. And today on the morning show, we are talking about turning your spiritual gifts into your career. How can you create an entire life that gets to be dedicated to what you most love to do and to bring those gifts to the world? So, hello, good morning. First and foremost, yesterday was my birthday. And it's so funny. I was inside teaching in one of my containers, and I was telling the women in there, I was like, I don't normally go around like just telling people it was my birthday. And I sure did yesterday tell everyone it was my birthday. And it made me laugh so much because, we went out to dinner and Robert, had let them know it's my birthday. And so every server or the what are they called? Sommelier. How do you say that? Sommelier. Wow. That came around. They're like, whose birthday is it? I was like, it's my birthday. It's my birthday. So today we're going to talk about turning your spiritual gifts into your career. And what we're really going to dive into is a lot of the mindset things that get in the way of us not doing this or feeling as though we can't do it. And there is clear the board. We're going to talk about the things that get in the way as to why we don't do it and why it is absolutely your responsibility to do this. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to give you one of the main mindset shifts that happened for me back in 2018 when I really started going all in on building my business, teaching online, coaching, spiritual concepts, helping people, the whole nine. I had a very strong belief system that said money and your paycheck, money and steady money coming in and like how you pay for your bills can only come from a sufferable job that gives you a paycheck. I very much had that belief system in place, as a lot of us do. A lot of us don't see making money as something that can be joyful. We see it as something that is like full of strife and hardship and struggle. And it's like, well, you got to kind of hate what you do, right? Because it's work. And I remember feeling this and I remember thinking it and also consciously knowing this is not true. But there's a big difference between what we consciously know and what is programmed into our psyche, because we can know something is not ultimately true, but still be operating by it. Do you know what I mean? It can still be kind of running our life. So at this time, I was just starting to really show up online. I was just starting to build my audience and the people that were listening to me all the time. And I remember dealing with this specific belief that how could I make money doing something that I actually love doing? Shouldn't money always come from a sufferable source? It wasn't that extreme, but you see what I'm saying? So the shift that I had was I had to take a moment and kind of back out of it because there was this idea that money comes in steadily from this job, but how could money come in steadily over here? Me doing things that I love to do, me running my own business, essentially money coming from me, right? So I was sitting here with this, and it was like there was two different sides, right? There was this side that I had been in, that I had been living, and then there was this new sort of realm that I was starting to open up, like this new world that was coming online for me. And I remember looking at it and going, first and foremost, this isn't ultimately true, right? I can understand that that's not ultimately true. But here was the shift that I had. What if the money that can come in from me expressing who I am and giving my gifts to the world all the time, what if that level of money coming in would far supersede the money of the paycheck? What if I've just been playing with small potatoes, right? What if I've been settling for this idea that this is the only way it can come in? So I just started playing with this idea. And then here was the thing that really shifted it for me. I realized that I was limiting myself by dedicating 40 hours of my life just to keep this steady, what I had in my conscious mind or my subconscious mind as the only way that I could make money and pay my bills. I had this really huge understanding that by choosing to not go all in on what I'm here to express, I was dedicating 40 hours of my life to not my gift, not helping people like I knew I could, not teaching online like I knew I could. 40 hours of my life every single week was going to an energy that was not actually the path that was my highest alignment. And it was this moment of realization that really kind of shifted the game for me because I realized that every single human on this planet has a gift. You have something that no one else on this world has. And I know if you haven't discovered that yet, that might feel very big and out there, but I promise you, you do. You have something that you are meant to bring to this world. Is it going to be through your career specifically? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But you have something that you're meant to bring to this world. Your only job is to discover that gift and figure out how you can live your entire life through that gift. Oh, I'm just having a memory right now. I remember seeing an interview with Jay-Z. I know it's so random, but it stayed with me where he said that exact thing. He said, I believe that the purpose of life is to find your gift and to live your entire life through that gift. So, an example, music. His was music or is music, and being creative and bringing that to the world. How can you live your entire life through the filter of your gift? So I started creating this sort of just like seesaw effect, it was like, okay, I'm not going to just quit my job because I'm not insane, and I hadn't fully I wasn't making money in my business yet, but I knew that it was possible. So I started to just shift the mindset belief that this is just one avenue. But I could open up a door that was a massive avenue where I could give what I have to give to the world and I could make a career out of it. That I could live my entire life through my gift. And I just started playing with the idea of it. And this is what I highly recommend for anybody who is shifting their mindset, shifting a belief system, especially if it's a really big one that can drastically affect your life. Before you take action, play with the idea. Just play with it in your mind. See if you can get your mind on board with moving over to what you would actually prefer your life to be like, what you would actually prefer to be believing in. So I just started playing with this idea. And I thought, well, what if it was possible? What if it is actually what I'm meant to do? What if I could make more money, be more supported, more in love, more in flow, more in freedom than I ever possibly could have imagined just by starting to switch over to this idea, this mentality, and then starting to slowly take action as though this is my reality? So here's your switch because I know a lot of us are here and I've talked to hundreds of women over the years who feel this big call to express their spiritual gift to the world, to teach, to coach, to help, but they have this mentality that they can't make money at it. And I just wanted you to get like real curious as to why. Like, just start asking yourself why you think that. Because once you start doing that, you're going to get to this bottom of the belief system. You're going to get to the root as to why you believe that's true. And then you have to just start breaking it down. Well, is that actually true? Why do I believe that to be true? So I started playing with this idea. And then I had this moment where you guys know the book, A Course in Miracles. I just opened that book randomly one day. I have not read that book through and through. I literally open it like it's like just like where you flip it open, you're like, what do I need to hear today? So I opened this book and I flipped to the page that said only the path Only God's path leads to your total salvation. Like only the path that God has for you leads to your total salvation. Now, I know that sounds very religious sounding, but I'm going to tell you how I interpreted it. When I read that, what hit for me, because this was in this time period where I was just starting to play with this idea of like, but what if I could just create a whole life on my terms? Like, what if I could live a whole life in the way that I wanted to do it? What if there were no have tos and shoulds? What if I could decide how it was going to work for me, right? This is this chapter of life that I was in where I was transitioning out of that norm core society and moving into what it is that I basically do now. So I read this, only God's path for you can lead to your total salvation. And what I interpreted from it immediately was that only God's path for you, the path that you're meant to walk, is the path that is going to work and going to hit on every cylinder and fulfill all of your life. Meaning, it's the only path where you're going to make the money and have the fulfillment in your career and have the beautiful relationship and have the health and have the good relationship with your spirituality, with yourself, with all of life. It is the only path that is going to lead to your total salvation. Total salvation. So I know like we're not going to get into the religious aspect here because I know that that can be really loaded and heavy. The way that I interpreted this was that the path that you're meant to walk on is going to fully take care of you. You don't have to worry about it. And it was a huge shift for me in my understanding of like, if this is the path I'm meant to walk on, then I don't have to worry about how things are going to work out. I can just walk the path. And so this is where we were talking about on the show today, or on the show on Monday, we were talking about shifting into your highest timeline. And this is the time period where I started realizing the path is beneath my feet. The path that I am meant to be walking is beneath my feet. And I have to know that with every ounce of my being. I have to know that what I'm doing is the right way, that as I am moving and as I'm creating and as I'm helping more people, that feeling I'm receiving that says, yes, this is right for you, I have to believe that. I have to trust in it. And so there was a huge, and there still is, I'm going to tell you right now, there still is, but there was a huge time period where it was about trust. And it was about going off of how I felt in my body. It was about going off of that feeling of just knowing, because there wasn't evidence for a while. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times we get super caught up and like we do one thing or we make one mindset shift and then we're looking for the evidence. And if we don't see the evidence immediately, we think, oh, I messed up or something has gone wrong. But there's a time period where you got to trust how you feel in your body. You've got to trust what you're receiving from your higher guidance. You've got to trust that the moves you're making are the moves that you're supposed to be making and that are right for you. And so I felt so good in my body, even though I hadn't really like, I didn't have like a booming business at this point. You know what I mean? But I was very confident in that this is where I'm going. This is what I'm creating. How is it going to happen? I have no idea, but I know it's going to happen. And so one foot in front of the other, and I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And then before you know it, I was full time in my business, making more than enough to support my life and living a life of freedom, right? So the biggest shift that we have to have when you are choosing to step into a higher dimensional lifestyle. Ooh, I really like that. Higher dimensional lifestyle, which essentially means that I'm going to live my life in alignment with the highest version of me. I'm not going to subscribe to these like societal conditioned realities that say I have to check these boxes and I've got to do things I don't want to do. And then I've got to like live this sufferable experience and that's it. Like when you start to leave that idea and you start to go into the idea of, but what if I could create my life on my terms? This is where you're going to start stepping into a whole lot of freedom, but you're also going to be very faced with the ideas and the beliefs and the conditions that you've been buying into your whole life. So once you hit this point, this is not a bad thing, this is a really good thing, but you are going to start seeing within you the things that didn't really believe that this was possible. You're going to start seeing the conditions that you had made up about how life works and about how you operate in life. But once you start to understand that you are the one who can decide what you're buying into, you are the one who can decide if you're going to choose to continue buying into the same ideas about life, or if you're going to start analyzing them and saying, does that actually work for me though? Like, does that actually work for me? Like, an example, the idea of I have to stay in a corporate job and work my way up that ladder and do work that doesn't really fulfill my soul. Like, that idea did not really work for me. I had a hard enough time sitting at a desk all day. I'm like, this is not going to work. Like, I can't keep subscribing to this. I cannot buy into this anymore. So, there must be a different way. And at this time, I was really starting to come into my spirituality, really starting to come into my gifts. And I could feel this like just visceral pull. Like, you have to do this. And I still feel it today. Like, even when I get frustrated, even when I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted or I'm tired, whatever, I can still feel this very visceral have to energy. Like, I have to. And so when you can start tuning into that, you're going to start finding that that energy will pull you forward. And it's just going to be this constant reoccurring thought. I love this because guidance from our intuitive self or our intuitive higher self, guidance about our path, it's not loud. It's not loud. It's not pushy, but it is constant and it's calm and it just keeps reoccurring. And it's like, you got to do this. 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 So, that constant guidance, once we start tuning in and listening to it, unsubscribing from the things that don't work for us, and starting to ask the question of, like, what would actually work for me? If I could create my entire life in the way that I want to create it, if I could create a whole career where I'm doing what I love most, where I'm being fully expressed and I'm helping people with my spiritual gifts, what would that look like? And once you start to allow that vision to come in, you're going to see the ideas and the belief systems that contradict it. Don't let this stop you. Get curious about it. Because once you start to see those ideas and those belief systems, you can understand why you've been living the life that you have been living thus far. But once you become conscious to it, that's your opportunity to start changing it. And so you can start asking yourself, like, well, what would I prefer? What would I rather believe about this? What would I prefer to create inside my own internal programming that I would rather be true? Because the truth of the matter is that if your old conditioned belief systems were ultimately true, everyone would be living the exact same life that you're living. But they're not. And they're not because we get to choose what we buy into. We get to choose what we believe about life and how it works for us. And we get to choose who we are in life and how it works for you specifically. So, as you can start to create your own idea of what you want in your life, and it's one of the biggest questions, isn't it? Like, how often do we ask ourselves, but what do I actually want? Not these like reactive ego, like, I want $1 million and life will be great. Not that stuff. Not that. What do you actually want for your life? Like, really tune in, drop into the heart. Like, what do I actually want? What would make my whole soul light up? What would I love to be doing? What would I love my day to be about? What would I love my life to be about? What do I want to dedicate my energy to on a daily basis? Start asking yourself these questions. And then here's the kicker. Then you've got to decide, I think I'm going to actually do that. It's a moment. It's like a very real moment. Actually, I think I'm just going to do that. I think I'm going to start creating that. And again, little 1 millimeter shifts towards the life that you actually want to be living are monumental. So just little things. Like when I started, I just started going live. I was still working in a corporate job, so driving to work every single day. And I just started teaching online. It was like, okay, what's available to me right now that I know I can do and that I have access to with ease? And it was like, well, I know I can teach. I know I've got subjects for days that I want to talk about, and I've got a phone. Okay, we're going to just start doing it. 1 millimeter shifts towards the life that you wanted. I knew ultimately the life that I wanted was to live my entire life through the expression of my spiritual gifts and helping people. I knew that's what I wanted. Okay, so what can I start doing now? And so I started doing this and showing up every single day. All of my audience from the very beginning calls these the car videos. And in the car videos, I would just show up. I would get my phone out when I was in traffic and not moving, and I would just start talking to the world. Powerful lesson of the day. And I would go for it and be like 5 minutes. Easy peasy, little tiny things. But it wasn't from this place of like, oh my God, I have to make this happen. It wasn't from a place of like, but how am I going to make money at this? And it wasn't from a place of feeling like it wasn't possible. It was like, this is the life I'm going to start moving into. So, what can I do right now today to start moving into that? And the way that I started to view it was like, I'm going to start closing in on my whole day to be exactly what I want. So I had my mornings that were like meditation and journaling and just like doing my energy work and like loving that, right? And then I had my evenings where I was like working out, and then I was starting to work on my business, starting to like do the things behind the scenes to get it up and running. So I had the mornings and I had the evenings that were like, that's the life I want to be living, right? And so I just started like imagining closing in on the day to where, in theory, my entire day would then become me living through my spiritual gifts. Okay. So, what I started doing, because I'm a really fantastic employee, was I started like creating things like in pockets of time while I was at my job, just creating posts here and there, posting the lives and the stories that I was doing, coming up with ideas for what I was going to do, just like little teeny tiny things, right? And then the office that I was working at, they built a gym. So then I just started working out in the middle of the day. And so before I knew it, my whole day, that 40 hours a week that was being dedicated to something that wasn't my spiritual gifts as my career, my whole day just started transforming into the life that I want to live. Well, long story short, then the company goes through a reorg. I end up getting offered voluntary severance if I would like to leave the job. I took the severance and then I went all in on my business, and it's been full time ever since. And that was back in 2019. So, our job when we're looking at like what I want my life to be is to first be really clear on what you want your life to be. And then second, start taking action on what's available to you right now. You are not going to have the whole shebang. Like there's no way that I could have planned my whole business back then. Like I didn't have access to it. I wasn't the human who was ready for that yet, but I was ready to begin. So, one of the things I always teach my clients is like, you're not an energetic match for the whole thing yet. Like, because everyone has the not enough feeling, right? It's like, well, I'm not enough for that. Well, in actuality, you're not. You're not enough for the whole big vision yet, but you are enough to start walking the path. And when you start walking the path, that path shapes you into becoming enough for the whole big vision. So I couldn't have handled a whole business on day one. That would have just thrown me into overwhelm. But I definitely could handle just taking the first step. What do I have available to me right now that I can do today? And so I started to do these little things. And then a new idea would come. And I was like, let me start doing that. And then a new idea would come and let me start doing that. And before I knew it, I had all the puzzle pieces laid out. So then when it was time for me to go full time into my business, I was ready. I was ready. Because what are you doing? You're taking the actions that you need to take to be prepared, but you're also having to really shift your mentality. I had to really work on that idea that I could be supported and that I could do something that would inevitably create more impact and that I could have a whole lifestyle on my own business. I had to shift that mindset. I had to be ready for it. Otherwise, I would have sabotaged it. And this is so, so important, because like I think a lot of times people hate their jobs. They want to start their own business, but they're not ready to start their own business. And so what happens is you just leave the job willy nilly. Mindset is not ready for it. You don't have the things in place for it yet. And then it goes into panic and survival and sabotage. We don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want that. And I will say this, I'm not saying it can't work. Anything is possible. There are some people who thrive on that. But for me, I knew it was going to be really important. I'm such a fan of like doing the seesaw. You know what I mean? It's like we're here, we want to be here. We're just going to like do this nice little gradual thing. I have done that with everything in my life. So before I knew it, I was then creating everything from this perspective and this mentality of like, I'm going to build my business and I'm going to live my whole life through my gifts. And it came to be. So, practically, if you know what you have to give to the world, you have some idea of what it is that you're meant to do, just start doing it in whatever capacity that you have available to you right now. Because not only is it going to start opening doors, but it is also going to start expanding what you have inside of you to give. Like you have gifts that you don't even know about yet. And the moment that you start expressing the ones that you do know about, like for me, it was like just show up and talk. The more that you express that, the more that these other gifts are going to start showing up. And then you're going to start shifting into the identity, the version of you who lives their life through your gifts. So you got to just start showing up. And then as you start to do that, then you're going to get this idea and this idea and that idea. And you've just got to trust it. You can't put a timeline on it. I know we want to do that, but really can't put a timeline on it because the moment that you start to put time pressure on something, you've entered into scarcity because you're afraid of running out of time. You feel me on that? So you can't do that. You've just got to trust and start to create what it is that you feel you are called to create. Just start. Just start that one little thing and then just start that one little thing. And then you're working on your mindset, your mentality the whole time. If you want to come into my world and do this with me, this is some of the main work that we do. And right now, we've just opened up early enrollment for the spiritual coach training program. If you feel called to coach and teach and help others through a business where you're coaching and teaching, that program is going to teach you how to do it and also give you the tools to start showing up online and to work on your mindset and stepping into that identity and that version of you who is living your entire life through the vision of what you see you want for yourself and so much more. So does this click for everybody? Does this make sense? If you know what you've got, start showing up with it. If you're not sure yet, start making time to intentionally get clear on it. What would I want? What would I want to do? Maybe for you, it's art. Maybe you paint. Start painting, start sharing your painting on social media. Start doing it in whatever way comes to you is like, "Oh, I could start doing that." Just begin with what you have available to you. And as you're beginning with what you have available to you, start paying attention to those belief systems that come up that say like, "Oh, but you can't make money at that." Oh, but nobody cares about that. Like, start paying attention to those things and start shifting and rearranging them so that you can align your mind to the life that you want to be living. Click, click. All right, my loves, I love you so much. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you guys back here on Friday for another episode of The Morning Show. If you are interested in coming into the 6-month training program on how to become a spiritual coach, you can reach out to me directly, or you can check out the link in the show notes below or in my bio, and you can receive all of the details. All right. I love you guys. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Goodbye, my loves.